This is my review of the BigIDesign Solid Aluminum Pen. The reason that I chose to purchase a pen as expensive as this one is because I've been carrying around I decided to start carrying a pen in my front shirt pocket, and I've been doing so for several months. And frankly, you know, these plastic pens that you can sort of get, this is the kind of pen I like, these gel pens, they're just not professional enough. And you know, since you carry it everywhere with you, and it's one of the first things people see. They see my face, they see that I'm going bald, they see I'm overweight, and then they see my pen. I wanted something that at least looked pretty nice. So I purchased the solid aluminum pen from TI Design. This was originally a Kickstarter project, and now it's a pretty successful company. And they send you a pretty sweet box with this sort of like, you know, felty thing that you can stick your pen in. I actually kind of think this kind of thing, I mean, it's nice, but it's not particularly useful. And then you got your pen, which it was originally in plastic, and it comes with a Pilot G2 ink and a refill. Hold on just a second. There you go. So this is what the pen looks like, and we'll get on to it a little bit more. Then it's in this sort of like really dense foam, and it comes with a basic cap, and then there's the sort of stylus cap that screws into the end. By default, they have the stylus cap because they're thinking you're going to use it all the time with your little eye, whatever. But I just don't do that. So we'll set that aside for now. I really have nothing to say about the little stylus, but I have lots to say about the pen. First of all, this pen actually surprised me. I was expecting to be pretty good. You know, it costs $59 right now from their website, free shipping. So I knew it was going to be obviously a step above in terms of, you know, quality, what you normally see around. But there is just nothing about the design that indicates that there's anything lacking in terms of fit and finish. All the tolerances are just so tight. There's no wiggle anywhere. The weight is real nice. I mean, that just has to do with the design, the size of the aluminum, and so forth. But I mean, these threads are just perfect. They don't make any. I mean, there is sort of like a little aluminum on aluminum feeling as you open it, but I mean, it's just so professional. They just did such a good job. The clip is titanium, not aluminum, which is one of the important things for me. In my view, what a pen needs to do is write well, look nice, and hold on to your shirt for dear life. And this does that very well. The clip is extremely strong. You can kind of see, you know, aluminum is kind of a light, bright metal, and titanium is a darker metal. I didn't really see that in the pictures on the website so much, but it's pretty noticeable if you're looking for it. Okay, so the cap, real nice, real nice. So this matters a lot to me because I carry it around in my shirt pocket, and I have toddlers, and they always like to grab things in my pocket and try and pull it out. Well, with this kind of pen, I mean, it just falls right out and it's gone. With the solid aluminum pen, they sort of yank on it, but it takes the shirt with it, and it won't come out unless you really want it to come out. Now, on the other hand, when you want to stick it in, you really have to sort of pry it up with your fingers to make a space. But I just like that so much. I mean, I can't tell you how valuable it is to me to have a pen that stays in my shirt pocket and sort of pokes up above. By the way, that is one thing, probably, you know, one of my, I have sort of two complaints about this pen, and they're just sort of, they have to do with the nature of the design. It's not that they didn't do a good job building it. It's just a little longer than I would prefer. And they could have taken a little bit out here instead of adding the stylus, because when I put it into a typical shirt, it sinks down and hits the bottom. I like to wear mine sort of close to the buttons in the middle. It sinks down and ends up about here, so there's a little gap there, and you know, it sort of looks like, well, anyway, the shirt goes up to here. And I would like it if the shirt went all the way up to here. Now, I have some short sleeve shirts that for whatever reason have deeper pockets, and it's fine. But if I was taking this back to the drawing board, I would squeeze out any little bit of depth that they could. It's aluminized, bead blasted, it's anodized, bead blasted aluminum. Anodization, of course, changes the chemical nature of the outer surface and makes it essentially sapphire, so it doesn't get scratched, doesn't get oxidized, and so forth. This bead blasting is just so slick. I think the right way to describe it is silky. And when I say silky, it's not that it's like wet. You know, some people think of silky as like really slick, but silk is not that slick. Silk just has a texture that's too fine for your finger to distinguish. but there's still some friction there, and that's the way this is. Actually, the pen body is significantly slicker, lower friction than the clip itself. The clip feels real dry, almost like, I would describe it as kind of a chalkboard. And I would imagine that the solid titanium pen, which is sort of their main product, probably has this feel to it. I have to say, feeling the two, the feel of the aluminum is nicer. It really is. Alright, so fit and finish, amazing. I was so impressed, so happy. It feels professional. Now, a word about colors. They make this in both black and the silver that you see before you, and they make the titanium in sort of a bead blasted, I think it's bead blasted, silver, a shiny like a chrome, and then the black. I think the black, you know, it's got to be cool. It's like ninja, right? But the problem with black is any kind of like scratch that you get or ding, or I think in the titanium, you know, this stuff probably won't rub off because it's so hard, but anodized titanium's not quite as hard. You rub it off a little bit and the silver shines through and it's going to look bad over time. So I think sticking with silvers is the right thing to do. They don't make this in sort of a, they don't make the aluminum one in a chrome sort of look. But anyway, this is the right one to purchase in my opinion. Actually, that sort of raises the question, why did I purchase the aluminum pen for $59 instead of the titanium for $75? Titanium is obviously stronger, right? But you have to ask yourself, what is going to happen to this pen? How is it going to no longer be a viable pen? Is it going to be broken? Most likely not. The more likely thing is that it will eventually get lost. That's just a reality of life. And this is a very strong pen, I'll tell you. You know, aluminum or not, you know, they say it's aircraft grade aluminum, it's 6061, which is also sort of bicycle frame aluminum. It's not actually that special of aluminum. It's better than the stuff that your soda pop comes in, but there are stronger varieties of aluminum that are used in, you know, military grade aircraft and in gun receivers, that kind of thing that they could have used. But this is, I mean, you take any sort of random pen and, you know, make a cross like that and, you know, press on them and see which one breaks. I can guarantee, you know, any sort of normal pen is going to break. Alright, the diameter of this pen, like the thickness, most expensive pens are these big fat sort of fountain pen looking things, in my experience. The majority of them. Some of them are thin. But this pen is actually, you know, on the outside it seems normal, but then you take off the cap, the portion that you grab is actually thinner than a typical pen. You almost feel like you're holding a quill or something. If you compare that to the thickness of, you know, the pens whose refills this takes, they're thicker. And I always used to complain about them because I sort of grab, this one's actually nicer than the ones that I normally wear. Look at this one, this is the Bic Velocity. It's got kind of a ridge there because they're assuming you're going to hold it back here, but that's not. I always hold my pens a little closer. Right on top of the ridge, it was no good. But it was nice and thick. Now this is actually thinner, so I don't hold it the same way with sort of my pointy finger sticking out. I actually hold it a little bit with my middle finger sticking out a little bit more, and my pointing finger can even come up and hold the threads here. Notice they have these little grooves to increase grip. Not very effective. They needed to bring these, you know, put grooves like this all the way up if they wanted it to really increase grip. And that is one of the things with this pen. It's a little bit slick. You know, you hold on to it and it works, but you're almost kind of tempted to hold it like this, like it's some kind of, you know, really artsy, you know, just a different kind of pen. It's a different kind of experience than what you're used to when you're using these sort of disposable pens. Alright, so, okay, I guess, you know, while I'm sort of talking about complaints, not that, I mean, it's just the nature of this kind of pen, and nice fountain pens often unscrew as well. Unscrewing is a little bit of a different animal than popping the cap off in a pen like this, or just clicking it in one of these others. Unscrewing takes just a second. There, okay, it's open. And that second was pretty quick now, but I'll tell you, when you're just going to go sign your name on something, it feels like an eternity. On the other hand, as you're unscrewing it, it sort of gives you a second to sort of appreciate, man, this is a nice pen. There are a lot of reviewers that say, oh, this pen's great like this, but then you put the cap on and it becomes too long. Now it's true, you put the cap on and this is a very long pen, very unusual kind of looking. The balance isn't that far off though. And this pen sort of encourages me, instead of holding it like this, to hold it like this and sort of write lightly. And when you do that, you don't bob around the back side of the pen so much. Maybe it's just me trying to change the way that I'm writing, but I actually kind of like it. When I first started out, I would just put the cap in my pocket or something, but now I always post it, and it's real nice. Probably my biggest complaint about this pen is just that the untwisting doesn't take any friction, right? Which sounds like a good thing, until you put it in your pocket and it sort of works back and forth as you walk around and do stuff. People nudge it, whatever happens. This has come unscrewed in my pocket a number of times. Now the pocket's not long enough that this can actually come out and mark things up, but it just comes apart. I kind of wish that there was some kind of friction. An example of the kind of friction is when you take this off. When you take the actual, the part that retains the refill off, there's quite a bit of friction there. That will never come apart by itself. You can see I've done a lot of writing. I'm just about done with this refill. And the reason is because there's a spring at the bottom of this that's pushing up here, and then this pushes against the cap here, so these threads are constantly under tension, and they're just not going to come apart by themselves. The cap, not so much. I'm not sure how that could be fixed. I guess they could put a spring here and maybe something that pushed against the actual pen, so that when you screwed it in there's a little more resistance. That would be an improvement if they could work that out. Alright, so the back side of the pen. As I mentioned, I don't use a stylus. I just don't use that type of device enough. When I do, it's my phone and just tap something out with your fingers. So I put in the little stopper here, which has a little milled slot. And I thought, I've heard people complain that this comes unscrewed, so I'm going to put some Loctite in there, some thread retainer. So I did, and guess what? It didn't work. Word to the wise, guys. Loctite and similar products are not glues. They don't dry. What happens is in the presence of iron or copper ions, they polymerize. And there's no iron or copper here. So it's not going to polymerize. You can't thread lock this. You'd have to put actual glue of some kind. Anyway, it never unscrews itself, so I've just sort of given up on that idea. Very fine pen. Okay, so let's talk about refills, because one of the selling features of this, one of the things I love, is that this pen can hold 35 different refills. So I have here a bunch of example pens. All these are pens that I've tried in here, and they all work perfectly. This is the Pilot G2, that's what it comes with, and it's what most of us are familiar with if you're not a pen aficionado. Uniball Signo 207. Here's a Zebra Sarasa in 05. And we have, this is a Foray, so this is like the Office Depot brand. Foray. Here we have the Zebra Sarasa SE. So this pen is actually an improvement. The body of the pen is an improvement over this pen right here. And it's a significant improvement, much better clip and so forth. It actually looks better. So it takes the same kind of refill though. And here we have a Pentel EnerGel, also a gel ink. Now what happened to the... and we got the Bic Velocity Gel, which is a real good buy. This is like less than $1. The thing about these pens is, we talk about, oh, we can use these refills, but the truth is these pens are cheaper than their refills. It doesn't make sense to buy the refills. You can buy the pens in boxes of 12, and I think it's true of all these pens. Either the refill's not available, or it's cheaper to just buy the pen, take it apart, throw it away, and take the refill out of it. So let's do an example. The pen here that looks most different to the Pilot G2 is the Pentel EnerGel. Let's see if I can find the thing. Pentel EnerGel. You see it's got this sort of like spiky end, kind of almost like a Pilot V5 or V7. So let's see, where does this come apart? Oh, at the back. These guys all come apart in different places. You take out the ink cartridge, pop out the ink cartridge, and look how similar these cartridges are. All these pens are just a little bit different up at the tip to make them incompatible with each other, but essentially they're the same length. If you find any pen out there that's gel or liquid ink and it's clicky, most likely it will fit in this pen. Okay. So drop it in there, boink. Then you go to screw it in. There's quite a bit of resistance because of the little spring at the back. And then, by the way, inside this cap, there's kind of like, I don't think you can see it, but if you get it in the right light, there's like a little circular indentation there. I think maybe some of these, there may be some refills that really stick out a long ways, and so they didn't want it to touch the end and sort of pull ink out anyway. So there you go, Pentel EnerGel. By the way, all these pens, it's amazing how much people talk about like these pens as if there's big differences between them. The performance of these pens is not really that different. And I'm going to do a separate video in which I review the pens themselves. You write with any of these pens with a similar sort of width, and you won't really be able to notice the difference. The differences are very small. The only exception is the Uniball Signo, which has a, the ink is, you know, when you write, it's smooth. Oh, what the, it still has the little wax thing. It's smooth. Even in the very fine tips. But it uses some kind of ink that's kind of in between gel, I think, and a ballpoint. And it's lighter than the others. That is, it's not as dark, and I actually don't like that. But it's real nice, you know, it doesn't smudge, and it doesn't, it's got a little bit more waterproofing. So this pen is different. All these other pens, including the cheap ones, you know, their performance is not that different from each other. The other pen that's a little bit different is the Zebra Sarasas, which used to be very much like the other pens, but in December of, around the end of 2013, they changed their ink formula to make it rapid drying, and when they did so, the ink that they replaced it with is not as good. So I actually don't recommend the Sarasas, which is kind of a sad thing because I just bought 24 of them. Anyway, alright, so we talked about okay, so what's the writing experience like, right? And by the way, these refills, I mean, they just really write well, all of them. I mean, they fit so perfectly in here. When you write, by the way, sorry if you hear my kid in the background, he doesn't like to sleep at night, especially if you can hear my voice. When you go to write, you can feel the paper. And I don't think it's actually a tactile feeling as much as you can hear it, and so you think you're feeling it. The aluminum is a more rigid material than these plastics, and so actually, you know, I've been one to say smoothness is not that big of an issue with pens, but with this pen, you might think about using one of the smoother pens. Thicker, you know, like a medium point instead of a fine is going to have a smoother experience if you don't like it. And then the Signo's smoother than the others. The other pens here that are smooth, you know, the Pilot's one of the scratchier ones actually. Sarasa's a little bit less smooth. I don't know, Foray, what's the other one? I'd say the EnerGel is probably the next most smooth pen here. They're all fine though. I mean, who's really like sitting around listening to whether you can hear the paper? This is just cheap copier paper, by the way. The Pentel EnerGel is actually kind of similar to the Pilot V5 in my experience. Like the way that it writes sort of has the same feel. Although I would say this is scratchy, so I guess the Pentel's better. I grabbed a Uniball Signo. This is the kind that I'm used to, at least. You know, they've got the clicky kind and then the non-clicky kind. This kind doesn't work in this pen. And the reason is that the refill is just a little bit longer. I've got to say though, if you were to cut this, I'm very confident that it would fit very nicely in this pen and work just fine. And that's probably true of so many different pens. But all the pens that you see before you work without any kind of flaw. Okay, so it's a little bit, it resonates a little bit more. It's a little louder when you, I mean, a little bit. We're not talking really loud, but I mean, can you hear that? It's sort of like a high-pitched resonant sound inside of the pen. Alright, durability. I mean, there haven't been any issues with the durability. I keep it in my pocket, and I actually do need something strong in my pocket, because I do things like, you know, this is my shirt pocket, right? So I'll put it in my shirt pocket, and then I'll find myself leaning up against something, like my daughter's in a bunk bed, I'm reading her stories at night, and I lean way over to hold the book, and I always found that I was pushing against this pen and making it flex. You can bend them. You know, not that that's a big deal. You break one of these, big deal, you just, you know, grab another one. But in something that's going to last, in something that costs some money, you want it to be strong, and this is very strong. Another thing that I noticed about it, and this is just the nature of metal, and in particular aluminum, is an excellent conductor of heat. And there's some mass here. So if it's a cold day and you pick it up, you haven't been holding it, it feels cold in your hand. It's kind of like sucks the heat out of you. I mean, it feels really cold. It sucks the heat into it, and it warms up as you're writing, and then pretty soon it's sort of like warm enough to hold. So just something to be aware of if you get the aluminum pen. I just think it's so nice though. I'm actually glad I didn't buy the titanium. I've thought about getting the titanium just for kicks and giggles because I've been so happy with this. But I think the aluminum's a better pen. One of the reasons that I wanted aluminum, besides the fact it's just a hair cheaper and aluminum's a little nicer color, and I think it's going to feel nicer, is that aluminum's a little lighter. It's 30% lighter. These pens weigh about 1/3 of an ounce each. This pen weighs about an ounce, 0.9 ounces or something. And the titanium pen, the titanium version of the same pen, weighs about 1.3 something ounces. Now that's not that big a deal, and actually now that I have this in my shirt, it really has not been an issue that this weighs 3 times what I'm used to. Maybe the titanium's fine. But I just thought it would be nice to have a little less weight. I'm very much into minimalism. In fact, you know, check out this is what I use for a wallet. Ziploc bag. It's a lot lighter, a lot smaller than a regular wallet. Smaller than a money clip, less intrusive. Obtrusive, I should say. Alright, and a couple of other things. Now, what's the competition? I spent a lot of time looking at pens and trying to think about what kind of really nice pen I wanted to put in my pocket. This is the only pen that really had the feature that I could then have the flexibility to use any kind of pen. I mean, you'll always be able to find some kind of pen that you can pop a refill in and you can use your pen. BigIDesign has one other pen that I thought was interesting. That's the TI Click, and it's basically a clicky pen but made of titanium. It really doesn't look quite as nice though. I mean, when this is in your pocket, it just looks phenomenal. Look how professional it is. I wear dress shirts. You know, I have to dress up. I'm an academic and I consult in the financial industry, and you know, looks matter. And I mean like professional looks, not rustic looks. And I thought that the other clicky pen that they make was not as nice looking, frankly. Now, Keras Customs also got started on Kickstarter, and they make several really interesting pens. They make the Render K, which is in many ways similar to this pen. It's a screwed cap. Make it out of aluminum, copper, bronze, that kind of stuff. But it just doesn't look nice. It's got two big fat screws here, and it's got like grippy stuff here, which I'm sure is very useful, but it doesn't look that nice. And that's one of the main reasons. If I just wanted useful, this thing's got a metal clip, or the Zebra. It's got a real nice metal clip that would hold into my pocket, and it's fine, and I can dispose of it. That's a useful feature, that you can lend it out and then not worry forever that you're going to get it back. I actually never lend this thing out because it's just too nice. Alright, so Keras Customs makes the Render K, which is kind of a direct competitor, and they also make the Bolt, which I thought was so nice. I really wanted a Bolt pen, but the Bolt, it's like a clicky pen, but it's got this round thing at the top. You push it down, then turn it, and I really kind of wanted it, but I'll tell you, and I'm just sure it's so satisfying. But frankly, it just doesn't look nice. The same problem I had with the other Keras Customs pen. Now, if these guys were to make a pen that was a little bit more straight and had a bolt where you actually push down on the bolt part of it, not on the top, and they made it with like a nice looking clip like this, then that would be something that I would purchase. If I wasn't to be able to get this pen, I would get a pen by Max Modco. They make a bolt action that's kind of that way. It moves down here, and it was a little more professional. It's a little shinier. It was a little pricier though, and I just thought, this has the flexibility of using whatever ink cartridge I want, and I wasn't so sure with the Max Modco. And then Fellhofer makes the TI Bolt, which is like this really rustic looking titanium pen. Also has the little clippy thing down here, but it's like this big fat ball. And they're always out of stock. Alright, so what would I purchase if I could not purchase this pen? If I just was not willing to shell out the $59 to purchase it, it turns out that the Pentel EnerGel, where did I put it? It's like this game of shells. The Pentel EnerGel. This is like the cheap disposable one, but they also have an alloy version that looks real nice. It's shiny and silver, and it'll take these refills. And that's recommended. I would totally suggest getting that if you are not willing to shell out the bucks for this. And I have noticed that some of these pens will interchange with each other, and so you might be able to find other things if you don't like the EnerGel or they're too expensive. EnerGels and Pilots are a little more expensive than some of these other pens. Forays, the Bic is very cheap. The Sarasas are moderate. Anyway, you can buy the nice sort of alloy one and then stick it into, and then put the refills in. Well, those are the main things I have to say about this pen. I mean, I seriously give it 5 stars out of 5. I carry it with me all the time, and it's just sort of part of my persona now. I don't lend it out. I use it all the time. It's, this is what you see poking out of my shirt pocket. I'm really glad to have it that way. I wouldn't change it. So, give it a shot. Oh, by the way, pro tip here. If you sign up for the newsletter these guys have, which basically never sends out stuff. I think it's only news when they bring out new products. They give you a coupon for $5 off if it's $50 or more. So this is basically the pen to buy, and now that I have it, I have no regrets. None of the other competition really stacks up. It was a little bit hard to justify the cost. So sometimes I lay awake at night thinking, man, $55 or $54. I could have used that to buy, I don't know, baby food or something. You can hear I've got kids. But you know, I think to have the pen that you really want, instead of if you're going to carry it with you all day, every day, it's worth. There's some value there. Thanks for watching this. I know it was pretty long, but there's a lot of stuff I wanted to say about it. Check out my, so under the same account, I'm going to do a review of all these pens and give you a little bit of the details about what I like about, what I like about them, what I don't like. There's a lot of people who review pens, and I think that they maybe emphasize things that are not that important to a normal person. Anyway, the solid aluminum pen and stylus, you'll have to take somebody else's word on the stylus, but the pen itself is phenomenal. Thanks.